A little extra time here. So I'm going to do another segment of this, the TRIMET puppets. I figured out in the last segment we saw that the president of the board, this woman, Linda Simmons, did not want to pass the tax grab advisory committee appointment rule change. Now, I didn't really understand it at the time, but I figured it out, you know. What she was doing was slapping down the 2017 advisory committee. That's what she was cutting them down. Okay, they wanted to make changes, and she said, "No, you can't. We are bigger than you, and we're overruling you. We're the biggie pants. We make the decisions, and we don't have to listen to you." So that's what happened there, and that's completely consistent with this woman's ideas. I mean, she's always bullying people to get her way. And that's what that was. I didn't really put it together until I rewatched it and then thought about it. Like, why would you make an issue out of it? Who cares? I mean, it's a transit advisory committee. I mean, all their decisions come to you anyway. You know, you make the final decisions in the end. So what was that all about? And most of the board members wanted to pass it, but they caved to her except for Lori. Okay, the 10-year term is kind of bad. Yeah, I agreed with that. It wasn't completely. I mean, her opinion made some sense. I'm not disputing that, but so unusual to see the board chairman say no to a resolution, because generally speaking, this stuff is all worked out beforehand. But in this case, this resolution came from the HB 2017 Advisory Committee, and so she put a kibosh on it. So that's what that was. And they spent an hour talking about that, which I couldn't believe. So let's go to the next topic.
All right. Thank you very much for the conversation, the discussion, and I look forward to having this come back again. And I think it also gives some direction to the staff, and Ozzy, I'll get to in a minute, some direction to the staff about maybe looking at some new processes to bring to the board. I mean, I'm thinking of all the times I'm asked to approve a body, a representative of an organization that I'm on, and I at least know what their qualifications are to do. And this is the one TRIMET committee that has an influence on a lot of money. First, Director Greg Skillman.
Thank you, President Simmons. I just have a kind of a procedural point. I think it would be helpful, now that the resolution has been disapproved, to have some kind of very brief.
They don't make the final decisions, that committee. Do they? I mean, I don't even know how. We don't see any. There's no way to look at what their meetings are doing in their meetings, as far as I know. I mean, we can't see it like this. I don't even see their agendas. There's nothing on the website about it that I know of anyway. I haven't found anything about it.
Maybe written advice to staff as to what the board would like to see, because I heard various opinions and I could maybe cobble together something, but it would be helpful to get something in writing, not a major thesis, but something from the board to help direct the staff.
Yeah, they don't know what you want. All of a sudden, out of the blue, you decide you're not going to do it like this. And very unusual for this to happen.
I agree. Let's have a little bit of discussion. Director Gonzalez, was that your point as well?
Exactly that. And in fact, I was going to be specific and state what I've heard so far in our discussion. There are some things that I think the bylaws can help clarify. One of them is to clarify this organizational appointment versus individual appointment. It may not be the same answer across all, but there might be some baked in organizational appointment allocations that we stand to be served well by clarifying. The other one is regards to just the overall structure. I think it could use some clarity as to the overall structure, as to at least the intended structure here. If we have criteria for regional representation, if we need to have a certain number from each district, if we're looking for any specific type of specialty or knowledge or criteria, whether it be access to writer experience, language experience, or technical experience. I mean, I think ideally we want a list of a broad swath of many of these skill sets represented. And we kind of have that right now in an ad hoc way, but it'd be nice to have an intended structure here. And then, of course, the staggered terms. It would be really nice to start instituting some staggered term structure where we're only bringing in a certain number per cycle so that we don't run into this 11 people terming out at the same time again. These things will help just clean up the structure of the thing. With regards to term limits, I've heard ideas about term limits. I share the concern about lengthy term limits. I would feel better about the term limit situation if we had a clearer structure, and if we had what I consider my final comment, any sort of criteria for service. I don't know that anybody who's been appointed signs on to some code of conduct, has established expectations for participation, for the type of thing, the reason why they are there, frankly. I could get over the need to approve up or down individuals if I knew that there's a structure, that you're looking for specialties, and that they are signing on to some code of conduct. To me, all of those things help. At this time, as presented, the batch of individuals as shown don't let us really have that conversation. And frankly, in closing, I have some specific concerns about the extent to which some of the individuals named on the list, how they are actually providing the service, whether it is indeed looking at what is for the benefit of mobility in the region, or whether they have more specific reasons to be there that may not be in the best interest or be intended to collaborate with the agency. Experience has demonstrated how collaboration is not entirely the method that everyone's approaching with when committee assignments are made. So those are the things that concern me. I would love to see the bylaws improved and have some better faith in.
Yeah, I just don't get this because it's an advisory committee. It's not, they're not making actual policy. You're making the policy. So why are you making such a big deal out of this advisory committee? I don't really get it.
The criteria we put on participants.
Yeah,
Thank you, Director Gonzalez. I agree with you. And Director Way.
Thank you. I just, for Greg, excellent question. There's a lot of viewpoints here. My request is really just to, say again, for me, and maybe just a beneficial synopsis of just 1 to 2 sentence description of each of the folks that are going to be coming before us. And, I do want to make a comment. I know there might be folks who are looking at this resolution from the public, maybe even the people being appointed themselves. And I just want to say thank you. Thank you for stepping up to do volunteer public.
Thank you for stepping up, but we're not going to do what you just asked us to do. Okay, but basically they're just shooting down what the advisory committee came up with here. Okay, they're shooting them down, and now she's saying thank you. So I would imagine some people on that committee are pretty pissed off about this.
Public service, regardless of whether you work for an organization, regardless of if you're a young person or an elderly person, or you've served on 10 different TRIMET members. That doesn't matter to me. What matters is that you have stepped forward to serve not only TRIMET, but the state of Oregon through House Bill 2017 that the legislature has put forward to. And so I just want to thank you if you're listening.
Yeah, thank you. First of all, voters didn't approve this to 2017. Okay, this was a tax grab. Get that straight. You were taxed without representation. Okay, they decided they were going to tax you. Now they're going to put on this phony show that somehow citizens are involved, but it's a lie. It's another manufacturing of consent moment.
I'm sorry that we weren't able to pass this resolution, but I think we still have some things that we want to iron and work out. But again, I just want to say thank you.
Thank you
for putting your name out there. Public service, volunteer commitment. That
your little words. People like me know you're full of shit. Okay, you just overruled them. So all the work they just did has now been thrown out the window because you're telling them no. So I don't know how long it took them to come up with all of this, but you've just thrown it out. So there you go. So don't be thanking them on the one hand and throwing their work out the window on the other, because this is what politicians do,
You do not get any payment for can be especially challenging. So I just want to thank you again for stepping up in these times. I also want to say on public record that, the folks that are getting appointed or on this list, they don't have to 100% agree with TRIMET. They don't.
They do.
I personally feel like...
How do they get on there? I think the general manager has to put them on there, right? I mean, isn't he the one that appoints them? I have no idea how this works. I don't remember.
They can have conflicting opinions about TRIMET. And
you want critics. That's what you want. You learn your best lessons from the people who are your worst critics. Silencing critics is the worst thing you can do when it comes to public policy. And we're seeing that in all arenas of public policy right now. Getting rid of all dissent. I'm surprised I'm still allowed on Twitter and YouTube, since I'm constantly railing against the standard paradigms that are being pumped into our brains.
And, things that we need to change and things that we need to do better for different communities. So I don't also want to rubber stamp people who are 100% for TRIMET, because that doesn't give the diversity of perspectives as well as criticism that we need to represent a public agency. Thank you.
That's all nice words, but I mean, if the general manager is approving them, then, I mean, if they're nominated by the general manager, that means they like TRIMET. You're not going to have, the general manager is not going to nominate somebody like me or Eric or anybody who's a critic. You're never going to see any person on any of these boards. I remember the only person that was a critic was Lynn Learback on the board. And as soon as Kitzhaber got in office, who himself was a crook, resigned in disgrace, threw Lynn Learback off the board.
You're muted, President Simmons.
I was trying to keep the pounding out of everyone's ears. The one thing that I haven't heard mentioned, I agree with everything that has been stated by Director Way and Director Gonzalez and Director Kim. I just feel for the regional coordination, we need to make sure, and maybe it's there and it just was silent the last time, but one of the areas that we need to make sure is that a representative can speak to the needs for enhanced regional coordination. I
don't even know what they're talking about. You don't even have a transit system that's functioning. Okay, so this is all useless hyperbole. Regional coordination for what? You don't have a transit system. Okay, your transit system is in disarray. It's basically non-functional. And you're just not gonna talk about that, are you?
I've experienced on this board that if you have lots of transit, you generally want it more frequent, and more days of the week.
Of course.
And everything. When you don't.
Of course, if you have transit, you want it frequent and often and reliable. I mean, this is what transit's supposed to be.
Don't have any, it's really hard to get it started. And I'm hoping that the comprehensive service review is going to address that before I leave the board. So with that, is that enough, Mr. Skillman? You're muted.
I can work with that, and I'm sure, Tom, if you have
Who is that
any
guy?
other desires for more specific direction, maybe you can tell us now.
I did have a couple questions, but I thought if it's so, I don't know if it's inappropriate for me to reach out to board members offline or it needs to happen in a public meeting.
I have no problem with you reaching out to board members individually.
Well, that's how it always is.
And I agree, Tom, with that as well.
Okay, great.
I'm good with that.
Yes, Greg, is that okay? Legally? Okay. And lastly, I just want to assure everyone that there are people who are very passionate about regional coordination on the committee, and make sure I know every time I talk to them. So thank you.
Thank you. Okay, let's move on to our next resolution. And thank you, everyone, for indulging me in my concerns and in voting with me to seek some improvements to the process now going forward. Our resolution number 2 is 22-06-37. And I don't have a similar concern here, okay? And it has to do with the board will consider appointment of members to the Special Transportation Fund Advisory Committee. You will recall during our education sessions, Director Mills told us that the state was merging that funding, but not the priorities with the HB 2017 funding. But it requires a separate committee to make sure the funding gets allocated as required. So, Mr. General Manager, did I just steal your language?
I think you sum
He just reads it right off the paper.
everything up, but President Simmons, members of the board,
That's who Skillman is. He's in the legal department. Grandpa.
TRIMET is the state designated Special Transportation Fund agency for all 3 counties, Clackamas, Multnomah, and Washington. Transit providers in these counties apply to TRIMET for the ODOT STIF money. And as the Special Transportation Fund agency, we act TRIMET as the pass-through entity of this funding, as what was stated. The board appointed the STIF Advisory Committee to advise and assist TRIMET regarding the Special Transportation Fund. STIF financial.
So what is this? Is this separate from the other? I thought those were the same things. Is this something different? I mean, they got so many goddamn levels of bureaucracy. It's just hard to keep track of it all.
Distribution. The committee reviews, evaluates, ranks, and recommends board approval of local transit providers' applications for funding. The committee also recommends for board approval of projects that seek federal funding to support capitalized preventative maintenance, and contracted services for seniors and people with disabilities. The committee must include a broad representation of transportation service users and providers in our Tri-County region. So with the assistance from TRIMET staff, the committee formed a nominating committee to identify, recruit, review, and select interested candidates from various backgrounds and experiences to replace 8 members who have left the committee. These 8 proposed members will bring a range of personal perspective representing the Tri-County region. The recruitment focused on candidates who could represent the diverse needs of seniors and people with disabilities within the counties, with a focus on diversity. Your approval of this resolution is requested to ensure the committee will operate effectively and that state and federal funds are distributed efficiently to meet the needs of local seniors and people with disabilities.
whatever.
Thank you.
I guess this is a subcommittee of the committee or something. This is just for senior citizens. Is that it?
General Manager DeSue. Is there a motion for this resolution?
Director Way, motion to approve resolution number 22-06-37.
Is there a second?
Second, Kim.
Thank you, Director Kim. It's been moved and seconded. Is there any comments or discussion?
Yeah, what the hell's the difference between this and the other?
All in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. Our third resolution.
All right, stop. Enough. Enough's enough. I don't want to get too bogged down in this.